So, if you watch me regularly, you'll know that I have been talking about drones, and I've been promising that I would talk about how the Russians have changed their tactics in drone warfare. Well, throughout the month of March, they've had the most drone hits of the war. I mean, this was like the heaviest 4,000 plus Shahed drones shot at Ukraine. In the last couple of days, it's been much lower. I don't know if they've run out or if they're saving up for a big, massive wave or something. I can't quite tell. But I can tell you this, something has changed in the way that they have done this. Their tactics have changed. What they use have changed. And I'm going to go through that. So yeah, let's start here. The drones that they have are slightly better versions of the same Shaheds that they had before. It doesn't sound like a lot, but there is something better that's a little bit harder. Nonetheless, the Ukrainians generally knock down 90+%, something like that, of these drones. And don't hold my math. It might be 80, it might be 95. It just depends on, what's going through and where. But the tactics have changed so that it's actually harder for them to shoot things down. And that's why you're seeing more destruction, generally speaking. So there's more Shaheds being used, like I said, in March than there were before. And so one of the things that has been difficult for the Ukrainians is actually shooting down more. And they have guys on backs of pickup trucks moving around at strategic points or strategic locations to, like, with a 50 caliber or something equivalent to try to shoot down these drones. What they don't want to do is have to use like a really expensive rocket to shoot down a Shahed drone. They want to try to knock it down in other ways that are less expensive first. And so this is how they're operating. Okay, so with that being said, they do that. And by the end of the year, they're going to actually have something like the ability to produce 500 a day as an average. Now, that's because they've opened up new Shahed plants. And so that's part of the puzzle. The Ukrainians, I believe, hit one of these not too long ago, but they still have been able to produce more. And it used to be that they could only produce about 65 per day. And so I was looking for 65 as an average. Are you above that or are you below that, in order to tell, like, what, how many drones they actually have to hit with. They often couple Shahed drones and missiles at the same time so that you're focused on one, not the other. Okay, now, but this is the new tactic that they've started employing: high and low flight. Greg Terry and I were talking about this the other day, just privately, as we're just describing or discussing what was happening. So they have two missiles coming at the same time, and one is very low to the ground and one is very high to the ground, and not missiles, Shaheds. And it's easy to take out the low one, and it's a lot harder to take out the high one when it's just above the low one. And yeah, so it can do some damage. And then what they'll do is they'll just run these Shaheds into, like, the side of a 16-story residential apartment block. They don't care. They're fine with that. And yeah, that's what they'll do. And then they'll target one city. If you notice in the news, for example, in the last few days, like 4 or 5 times this week, it was just Kharkiv. Now, they'll fly things in different places. And if those other ones get through somewhere, it's just fortuitous. But they'll really, really target. They'll double down on one city. And we've even seen double taps with Shahed drones or waves. 10 minutes later, here comes more, here comes more, here comes more, that sort of thing. And then finally, they'll be flying through like windows of buildings like it was 9/11, just using that kind of method. So they're changing their tactics. And I think that as time has gone on, they've gotten more and more used to evolving their tactics to see what works and how they can be more effective in creating misery for Ukrainian civilians. All right, so that's what's happened here recently. That's why we're seeing more damage than we've seen before, because there are more numbers with more powerful drones, with more explosives, with a low one and a high one simultaneously targeting fewer cities rather than being all over the map. So I hope that helps you and gives you some context about what's happening with the Shahed drones. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being willing to listen to me this long. Thank you for caring. Thank you for the likes, the shares, subscribes, coffees, for even wanting to hear what's going on here. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.